Oh, oh, this is beautiful. This is pure beauty right here. Here they come! How about you, you bastard? Come here! So after the recent update to Warframe, we were given a rework to Exalted weapons. This also included Pseudo Exalted. Originally, Landslide went off the mods of your melee weapon. As of this update, you can now mod his ability, separate from your melee weapon. Now, this did in some way nerf Landslide, mainly because you cannot use ribbon mods with his ability anymore. However, do not despair over this. Even though people cannot have their stat sticks anymore to make this guy insanely overpowered, he still is a good frame to use. I actually like this change that they've made to Atlas. When DE reworked Landslide, they gave him this stance mod, which changes everything. Every time you punch your target, it costs less energy, which is pretty huge. Atlas used to consume a lot of energy, and if you don't have the means to keep his energy up, you will end up not being able to utilize him very well. Now, to fix this problem, you would need things like Xeneric, Zata Invocation, Equilibrium, Streamline, all sorts of mods that will increase your efficiency and your energy gain. Me personally, I use Zata Invocation. Now, whilst you have your Grimwire equipped, you can charge up your meter as you use your Landslide, so you can just spam this as much as you like. So you'll never run out of energy. Acquiring this mod can be very difficult, but it is well worth it. To obtain this mod, you would have to go 4 whole rotations on a Deimos Entradi Mirror Defense on Deimos Manio. Please keep in mind, there is a 5% chance this will drop. If I were you, I would just buy it for plat from some other player. I got really lucky with this thing. I would suggest people would just buy it. I mean, you can go for it if you want. I mean, I'm not your dad. Anyway, another thing that I should mention is Helmuth abilities. The ability that I have subsumed onto my Atlas is Nourish, which I have used to replace Tectonics. Tectonics, it's not the best ability. I mean, I suppose it can be useful in defense situations, but I don't really use it all that much. With this ability, you can manage your energy much easier. And to obtain it, you will need to subsume a Grendel. So with the topic of energy out of the way, let's talk about builds. I would encourage any and all players to build their frames however they want. I only want to give recommendations. There really is no such thing as a perfect build. But if you want to build Atlas in a way that is useful and efficient, I would build him with the intent of increasing his durability, which means his health, his armor, and I would also build him with range, strength, and efficiency in mind. Efficiency because of what I explained before, obviously. Range because of his Petrify ability. Now, you will find yourself using Petrify quite a lot. The bigger your range, the more enemies you can turn into statues. The more enemies that you turn into statues, the more armor you will get, which means you can make yourself more durable, and with the augment rubble heap, you can make yourself twice as strong. Do keep in mind that Petrify does eat up a lot of energy, so be careful when using it. I also advise against using this against targets that have Overguard, mainly with Eximus targets. I would strip their Overguard first before thinking about even using that ability on them. I am going to recommend a very good arcane that you can put on your secondary weapons called Secondary Fortifier. This arcane will allow you to strip Overguard much easier, and it will also provide extra Overguard to yourself, which is a nice extra bit of protection. Now, with Power Strength, it can give you some extra damage with your Landslide, but don't focus too much on Power Strength. Most of your damage will come out of your mods put onto your Landslide. Let me tell you a secret about modding weapons, especially with melee weapons. You would think to yourself that putting Prime Pressure Point onto my melee weapon will really increase its damage by a lot. Well, it does, but not as much as mods that will increase your status chance, your crit chance, and your crit damage. This is what you need to look out for. And of course, the damage types that you put on your weapons. Things like viral and corrosive can really put your damage numbers up. I have managed to put both viral and corrosive onto my Landslide through an arcane called Melee Exposure. Pairing this with viral damage being modded onto your melee weapon is pretty damn good. And this arcane will activate every time you use your ability, so it's perfect for Landslide. The build that I used at the start of the video was more of an experimental build with Melee Vortex. I have pretty much stuck with this build. I was trying out this build because I figured that if I could draw more enemies to myself, I would be able to kill them off more efficiently. But I found that this build is much better. And plus, it has Blood Rush. All of these mods are just tiny little extras compared to what this mod can do for your weapon. Blood Rush can drop from a variety of sources. I would not recommend doing the Lure Spy because it is a bit tedious. You can get this as a reward from the circuit, but there's a slight chance you'll get it. I would just go with the Necrolisk bounty. It's also worth mentioning that Prime Reach can increase the amount of targets you damage. So with the topic of mods pretty much covered, I want to point out that there are a couple of useful arcanes that I would recommend for Atlas as well. One of them is Arcane Belcluse, another is Arcane Fury. Molt Augmented is also one that I would highly recommend, as well as Arcane Camisado. Camisado? I can't pronounce that properly. This will increase the movement speed of your Rumblers and will also give you extra power strength whenever they attack. In order to obtain Arcane Fury, I would trade Volsva with Lloyd, mainly because the main drop table for this arcane comes from the Eidolons, which can be a bit of a tedious farm. I would buy this through Lloyd. The other arcanes that I mentioned can be bought from the Steadfasts and the Hex for standing. I want to point out that Naramon is also a very useful focus school to use with Atlas. This is because Naramon has an ability that allows you to maintain your combo count for much longer, which is incredibly useful with Landslide. So if you do not have any other means of gaining energy, definitely use Naramon. And lastly, I want to talk about the shards that I have on my Atlas. I have a Talforged Amber Archon shard with casting speed, and all the rest of these are Talforged Crimson Archon shards with melee damage. This will be the biggest boost to Atlas's Landslide, other than everything else. It is expensive, but it is well worth the farm. You're also probably wondering why I chose to have Toxic Flight on my Atlas. Well, the thing is, I wanted to have more maneuverability on my build. If I can get places faster, I can punch things faster. And so, with the build segment of this video out of the way, let me tell you a little something that I think every player, especially new players, should hear. You don't necessarily have to use my build, or anyone else's build. My original Atlas build was an experimentation. I wanted to experiment with what Atlas can do. I didn't originally hit those big numbers at first, but after a while, I did. I definitely want to encourage people to experiment with what they have. The wonderful thing about Warframe is that you can build your frames however you like. There's no right or wrong build. Just play around with it. Mod your frames to your playstyle. I wouldn't even judge you if you had Prime Sure-Footed on your build, despite having this passive which gives you full immunity to knockdown when you're on the ground, and when you're using Atlas, you'll be mainly on the ground most of the time. But if you don't want knockback whilst you're in the air, then, well, that's fine. I mean it, I'm okay with that. There are some missions that will knock you out of the sky, and this mission is a very good example of that. Like, see what I mean here? These are annoying. Now let's equip Prime Sure-Footed. See, Prime Sure-Footed does have a use on Atlas, because sometimes you will need to bullet jump onto those platforms. So build your warframes however you like, and keep in mind which stats affect what abilities, skills, stats, everything like that. And if it's not perfect, it's fine. More and more people need to be okay with that, with not being perfect. Because everything does start from nothing. So, to lead this off, I hope you all have a wonderful morning, day, evening, whatever time that you're in. And I will see you guys in the next one. Right after I punch the absolute hell out of everyone in the system. Let's go!